We had several that could not make this session but would like to have the recording. So as a labor of love, we are recording this today so that we can send it out for further engagement. And we will begin the recording at this time. We wanted to open up the space for kind of centering us today in what our main focus is when it comes to how we work together and how we meaningfully engage. And the tool in which leads our work as the co-leadership team of people with lived experience, the Habits of the Heart, has really been the core of what gels us together, our ways of being, and our shared ground rules or expectations that we have when we convene together, building and co-designing with communities. So I wanted to give an opportunity to share what those habits of the heart and then propose it for our ground rules or our expectations or our shared agreements that we'll have today. Number one is an understanding that we are all in this together. We understand that this work is not easy at all. There are a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of people that are at the table working as a team. And what we've learned with this number one habit is that when we can really have an understanding that we're collectively bringing our skill sets and our gifts and our education together to really lift up how shared co-design can work, then that is with an understanding that we are all in this together to create better outcomes for the intent of what we're doing. Number two is the appreciation and value of otherness. The powerful thing about this is that it really allows us an opportunity to embrace things that are different, people that are different, ideas that are different, concepts that are different, things that are new. And that when we are working with people that are diverse, our method, our way of being when it comes to inclusion is creating open space and appreciation for the value that a person's otherness brings. We all have different skill sets, passions, and stories of lived experience that we bring into a space, and having this as a shared agreement to appreciate the value of the otherness that we bring really helps for sustaining how we co-design and co-lead together. The number three habit of the heart is an ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. With that, that's really having an understanding that we're not going to always see eye to eye, we're not going to always have an understanding, but being able to hold that tension and redirect any negative energy that may come, whether it be offense, whether it be misunderstanding, and be intentional in going deeper within ourselves to find how we can give life. How can we work together with this differing perspective? How can we work together with this unique otherness that is presenting itself? And being able to kind of look deeper within, leading from within, and leading together, to be able to hold that tension in life-giving ways and produce something beautiful out of something that may be rough. Number four of our proposed shared agreements is that we have a sense of personal voice and agency, meaning we all have a message that we are in pursuit of sharing, in pursuit of developing, in pursuit of being a part of, and that we have a sense of personal voice and agency, meaning that we're leading from within and giving ourselves an opportunity to develop that personal voice. And we understand that the message that we're carrying has the impact of impacting those that are around us. And this sense of personal voice and agency gives us the leading from within courage to just step forth and share our personal voice, share our sense of agency, and how we can collectively work together collaboratively. And number five of our habits of the heart is really about a capacity to create community. Everyone on this call today, everyone viewing this webinar is going to come to represent some community that we don't necessarily have access to. That capacity to create community is that when we come together collectively with this intent and this shared agreement, that we're bringing those aspects of community into this space, and we're creating community of how we work together, and that we're intentional in embracing that and growing that capacity. So these are some habits that we'd like to propose, not only as a way of being and a way of doing. It's theory to practice for us, because this is how we govern ourselves as a co-leadership team. This is also what we propose and extend as our shared agreement. I would like to, at this time, just give you all an opportunity to chat in If you are good, just put in, yes, I accept these shared agreements. And then if any of them resonate to you, just put in the number 2, and the lines are open for you to communicate over the airways as well. So we'll pause here and just do a check-in on the habits of the heart.
And as everyone is chatting in and sharing, this is Bernice B. Ramal speaking. These habits of the heart has been just so helpful for me in this co-leadership collaboration with Yolanda and Shemeka, specifically, number 1, understanding that we are all in this together, because at the beginning of each of our meetings, we make sure that we emphasize this as part of theory to, as far as how we check in with each other in terms of our agenda and how we hold the space to ensure that there's equity. And so I have to really say that it's been an honor and a privilege to see emphasized in our co-leadership.
Thanks for lifting that up. Definitely appreciate. Like I said, this is really very powerful when we set an intention that this is our shared agreement. In some groups that I work with and I use this with, number 1 becomes the most powerful one, that we have to really stand on, that we're all in this together so that we can get things done. I'm going to read through some of the things that are coming in through chat. Let's see, we have Kristen saying she resonates most with number 5, a capacity to create community. Rumana says that 4 and 5 resonate with her the most. We have Ubin 1. Number 2 and 5 resonate the most. And Marta says number 2 resonates strongly. Kristen Ortega, number 4 and 3. And then Seth shares, I love the way that each of the habits is individually important, yet none can stand alone. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We like to share this with groups too, for you to be able to see like which areas are a little bit challenging for you and how you're growing your capacity to engage. And then look at these as an opportunity to grow in. You know, one of the ones that I fluidly have to grow in is that ability to hold tension in life-giving ways. You know, so it's not a finite that these just automatically become magically a part of you and you're never challenged by it or you never have to refine this truth for you. But this is a constant that we all get to grow. We can find our growing edges and be intentional, finding ways that if number 2 is challenging, then we are working on ways to appreciate the value of otherness when we're working on a team. If number 4 is a challenge because we don't often speak up for ourselves or don't necessarily feel comfortable that our voice is heard, then we're going to pursue ways to find ways to assert our personal voice and agency and value others when they do take the lead in the room as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would add that creating and having transparent ways as your meeting with your organization, with your group, in order to have open and honest feedback for 1 through 5 as you're growing in those edges in terms of moving forward through challenges.
Absolutely. Thank you for lifting that up. Bernice, do you want to lead on this one?
So as a co-leadership team, we developed quotes that are very meaningful to us in this experience as people with lived experiences of inequities. So I will have each of us read our quotes. Would you also like to read Yolanda's quote, Shemeka?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you can see, this is our co-leadership team. My quote is, be a mirror alongside others when they cannot see the brilliance within themselves. And Yolanda's quote is, for in all of us, there's a destiny tied to someone else. Let us love, share, and give that we may grow in greatness together.
And my quote is, sharing our lived experiences brings the faceless issues to the heart to promote change. And we will have everyone just share which of these quotes, or if all of them, stand out for you, and what does it mean for you in this moment. And if you can either chat this in, or you can share it verbally, whichever way you would like to hold the space. And feel free to communicate verbally if you would like, or you can chat it in. Okay, so there I see a response from Romana, and she says, the first and the third quotes resonates for me, especially the third quote due to my own lived experience. Thank you for sharing, Romana.
Absolutely. So with this, we're just choosing one of the quotes that kind of stands out to us as we're reading them, which one resonates with you of the three quotes that kind of leads our work and kind of also holds our values.
And as we're waiting for others to chat in, I have to say that when the co-leadership team shared their quotes with me, all of them had special meaning for me. When I looked at Shemeka's quote in terms of being a mirror so that people can see the burdens within themselves, it was just so powerful. And then with Yolanda's quote in terms of a destiny tied to someone else, I see this emphasized in our co-leadership team. And so each and every one of these quotes has helped me in my journey as well. And I just see a quote came in from Kristen. She says, I identify with Bernice's quote the most, promoting change with voices and experiences of those underrepresented. Big goal of mine in my current role, leading a hospital patient and family advisory council that really needs more diversity in a variety of ways. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing.
Absolutely. So now that
So,
we've taken some time to introduce ourselves, I wanted to give us some time to be able to hear from you all. Oh, and something else came in. So Kristen Ortega says, for me, I think the first and last probably most resonate with me in the work through my lived experience as well. I think it's advocating for the voiceless is really teaching others how to frame. Love that. Thank you for lifting that up, Kristen Ortega. So we want to hear from you. We want to know who you all are and what you all bring to the space. So we're going to take this time to look at, if you could please chat in your name, and you can choose to identify as an individual, or you can identify as your organization, what city or organization you are with. We like to do a human being check-in, so if there's anything you want to lift up, what are you bringing into the space, like how are you showing up wholly? We firmly believe in not having to compartmentalize who we are, but we bring our whole selves into the PLE work. And so we check in with us doing a human being check-in with celebrations and shares. And then we wanted you to have space to make sure at the beginning of this session that you're listening, having the space to lift up burning questions that you have on today's topic that we can incorporate and make sure we answer and address either during the presentation or sometime before we wrap.
and as people are chatting in, I see that a comment from Seth came in. He says that I love the inclusion that Yolanda lifts up and how interconnected our issues and the solutions are. I also see a comment from Eubens1 that says Kristen's quote expresses my thoughts to a T. Thank you all for sharing.
Yes. And welcome to the space, Stephanie and Amanda.
So for those just joining in, we're asking you to chat in your name, your affiliation, or if you're an individual, you can represent yourself, your check-in as far as your celebrations and shares, and also for you to share any burning questions you have on today's topic.
Okay, so thank you, Seth, who is representing well-being and equity in the world. He's in San Antonio today, but lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Nice. I hope you're experiencing some nice weather over there. I'm Shemeka Ebony. I am tuning in from Raleigh, North Carolina. My organization is I Am Brilliant. And my check-in is that I'm really excited about today's session and what will come out of it as we embark on this journey together. All right, we have Bernice B. Rumala from Southern California, representing Change Agent Firm, and she's passionate about addressing inequities as a part of a community of solutions. Kristen Ortega is joining us as a remote worker from El Paso, Texas, working with the Louisiana Department of Health. She is an equity specialist and received this from another colleague, joining to see, hear, and participate. Thank you, and welcome to the space, absolutely. Then we have Rumana Rabbani out of Chapel Hill, UNC HPM Department, APHA also. I'm excited about working with the PLE group and the Racial Equity Leadership Action community and connecting relationships across national organizations. She's interested in how can we integrate habits of the heart to systems thinking, implementation science framework, and also how do we list these action communities strategically on a national level. Her role as PhD student, graduate research assistant, and chair for awards and policy committee of community health workers section of the APHA. Welcome to the space, Rumana. Then we have Beth Rubenstein out of Detroit. Excuse me, she's a patient advisor with Henry Ford Health System, celebrated 11 years of transplant living community group and their PFAC, passionate about incorporating all voices in healthcare quality improvement, both locally and nationally. Awesome. Oh, and we did have some burning questions come in. Let's see. Burning questions from person representing the organization. My organization is not there yet in engaging people with lived experience. How can we start? What are the first steps? Christian Woodruff, Tampa General Hospital, Tampa, Florida, Patient Advisory Coordinator. Our advisory council is growing and impacting hospital decisions by infusing the patient voice. Yes! How can I access, incentivize, and promote recruitment of individuals who represent different ages, races, ethnicities, genders, etc. onto our Patient and Family Advisory Council? All ideas are welcome. Then we also have, welcome to the space, everyone, Promise Community Health Center out of Iowa, Population Health Department at a rural FQHC, that's a federally funded health care organization, and how do we provide feeling of a safety for people with lived experience in healthcare? And then we also welcome Promise Community. Have Marta well-being and equity, bringing both myself as a member of an organization, but also as my life as an immigrant to the U.S. I'm in Boston. I want to learn more about how we engage individuals with lived experience in a respectful manner.
Thank you all for sharing this. I must say that with all of us at the table as a community of solutions, that we're all bringing forth expertise. So as these questions are arising, also see yourselves as sources and our group, our community as sources for answers in terms of sharing your expertise.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we're transitioning to what does it mean to engage people with lived experience, because as the topic of this webinar emphasizes, it's better results by engaging people with lived experience. So how do we create these better results by engaging people with lived experiences in our initiatives, either as an individual or as an organization? And this is what we'll be discussing in the next few slides. So part of the work for the People with Lived Experience group is we actually worked on a number of tools for the community. And these tools were co-designed by people with lived experiences of inequities for people with lived experiences of inequities. And the work group comprising of people with lived experiences of inequities, as part of this, we conducted listening sessions as well as work group meetings with community members through a process of co-leadership and co-design. And the purpose of the listening sessions and the meetings were to identify barriers to existing tools for relationship building and identify what is working and not working with relationship building, as well as identify needs to enable effective relationship building. So one of the questions that came in from the organization had to do with what are the first steps. And the first steps really start with pre-relationship and relationship building with people with lived experiences. And from these sessions, as well as the data, there were several themes that came out in terms of needs at the pre-relationship and relationship building stage. And these themes are what are outlined in the slide. So when we look at co-leadership, we need to understand what does it look like to truly co-lead with people with lived experience at the very beginning of the relationship building stage, where everyone is seen as an equal stakeholder in a respectful manner. And the People with Lived Experience team, we provide coaching on what this can look like from theory to practice, because it's one thing to have a checkbox and say, yes, we're emphasizing co-leadership and everyone being an equal stakeholder. And it's another thing for this to be authentically practiced. And so we provide coaching on this. Another thing is co-design. And co-designing with people with lived experiences within organizations is important, from meetings to grants to services that are provided, and a way to obtain results for your organization, as well as initiatives that you're working with as an individual. And then when we're looking at voice, there are some who say that they are engaging people with lived experience, but we have to ask ourselves, are the voices of those with lived experience really present where everyone is an equal stakeholder? Or are there power dynamics at play? Because there's a difference between having a stakeholder at the table versus having true voice in decision making. And so we don't want there to be a checkbox where people are invited to the table, but there aren't truly a voice in terms of decision making. And so this is something that we also provide navigational guidance on. In terms of resources for your organization and initiatives, have people with lived experiences been involved in providing input for equitable distribution of resources? And has there been transparency in communicating the resources available? Because open and honest communication is the key, especially at the pre-relationship and relationship building stage, so that it's a more of a proactive process versus a reactive process when it comes to co-decision making and resources. And then when we look at power dynamics, really addressing power dynamics and understanding if power dynamics in the relationship building process to engage people with lived experiences of inequities have been addressed. And if all are comfortable sharing their lived experience expertise because there aren't power dynamics at play. And when we look at equity, equity is so important and should be at the core of all of the processes. And so really asking, is there intentionality in building equity at each stage of the process in engagement of people with lived experiences where everyone is valued? And then in terms of process, when one is looking at process leading to outcomes, is there transparency in the process to engage people with lived experiences leading to the outcomes? And have any barriers been addressed in the process that would prohibit engaging people with lived experiences? This could be many barriers in terms of transportation barriers, barriers even in terms of voice while in the meeting. Is the way that the meeting's set up allowing everyone to have an equal stakeholder as far as serve as an equal stakeholder in terms of input? So for example, in terms of meeting and agenda, is this done through a process of co-design with people with lived experiences? Or is the meeting agenda formulated based on the organization's pressing priorities? And this is very important. It's something that we have emphasized in our co-leadership team, where we co-design the agenda intentionally for each meeting to make sure that all voices are heard. And then in terms of ownership, do people with lived experience have true ownership of some of the projects leading to outcomes? Or is a checkbox approach being used? So again, these are some of the areas that the co-leadership team will be focusing on to help organizations and individuals build capacity from theory to authentic practice through webinars, coaching sessions, and workshops. And I'll see if Shemeka has anything to add to this.
Thanks so much, Bernice. You have walked through it so wonderfully. We do have some comments that were coming in while you were sharing. Romana commented around the institutional power in healthcare systems, and she loves the proactive process.
Thank you, Romana.
So what we're going to go into now, excuse me, is really looking at what lived experience defined means. We all certainly come to the space with lived experience in some capacity. And so what we like to do is lift up the fact that the expertise in this case does not come from training or formal education. It means that those with lived experience have a knowledge on a system, a process, or an issue from the perspective of those most affected by or trying to engage with that resource. In our work, we prioritize the experiences of individuals who have lived experiences of present day and historic inequities individuals face day to day. And this can include, but not limited to, racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, ableism, xenophobia, etc. When we look at how we focus on relationship building and people with lived experience, it's unanimous and consistent throughout all aspects of research and all voices that have been asked, is that people with lived experience are needed to improve the results within your organization, especially when we're looking to utilize programs or initiatives that will impact those with lived experience as or how we identify as our target community. Them being involved to improve the results is something that is very solid in how you create and maintain sustainability. Having a personal understanding of the inequities and solutions to bridge inequities in the system are very valuable in creating sustainable outcomes. And we also learned and understand that people with lived experience play an integral role in helping organizations relate to communities. We often hear and share in a lot of the racial equity work that we synergize this with is that you cannot feel empathy without coming into proximity. So that does mean in some cases that our organizations and institutions have to be very intentional in building those meaningful relationships within their communities and with those that are identified as people with lived experience. It is most effective to build sustainable relationships with people with lived experience to create a community of solutions, meaning that all works together. And it's so important that we have all of these components in place or on the journey to gaining these skills and these relationships to create better and sustainable outcomes in our improvement work that we're targeting and focusing on in our community. Bernice, is there anything else you want to lift up around these two before we go into the equitable partnership?
This is great. I would love as people are hearing this to chat in whatever is circling around for them as we're going through these slides.
Awesome, thank you. So now that we have an understanding of what lived experience is, we've heard of ways that lived experience shows up with power. We've looked at the relationship building of PLE. We're going to transition into the very important component of building an equitable partnership. Things that we have understood and we identify and we lift up as things you need to know is that change happens at the speed of trust, and sustainability depends on it. There is not one without the other, and we cannot create improvement to be sustainable without trust of the community, people with lived experience, and organizations and institutions having authentic relationships. We encourage you to look for, support, and celebrate abundance. With this mindset and framework of abundance, we help see our lens very differently and seeing the resources that are around us versus the inequities that or challenges we may face. Information, solutions can come from anywhere. It can come from not only inside our organizations and institutions, but inside our community as well. And creating ways to hear that, to share that, and be intentional of co-designing what change can come from that abundance is very important when working with people with lived experience. Invest in a change process that enhances engagement, relationship, and capacity. And this kind of takes us back to number one, when we talk about change happens at the speed of trust. This may feel like it's a lot to carry or a lot to shift or a lot to motivate an organization that may not have these practices currently existing, but no matter where you are, there's a way to build and begin that journey of being intentional about building an equitable partnership. Embracing collaboration completely and joyfully means that we bring our whole selves into this work, and that is another aspect of the relationship building and the trust building. Distributed leadership that includes a wide range of formal and informal leaders. It's an opportunity for our gifts and our skills to kind of join together in how we co-design collaboration. It's engaging those most affected by the issue at a leadership level to co-design, evaluate, and implement the work. That includes measuring what matters to the community and to the organization. That means asking beyond the focus group or the needs assessment, what are other ways that people with lived experience can be engaged and continue engagement by finding ways that they can grow their leadership capacity within your organization. And then make the learning or the data, process, and outcomes completely accessible. Meaning that after we've done the focus groups, after we've done whatever research, after whatever program we've implemented improvement with, that we're very transparent with the outcomes and that it's available for the community to use what they may have had input in, or be able to share within the community more broadly what they were a part of in the learning process. And we like to end this slide with this very important focus, and what really leads the work is equity in the work leads to equity in the outcome.
And I see a question has come in, actually two. One is from Seth, and he says, I'm curious if you would differentiate between lived experience, those most affected by our work, and end users. Thank you, Seth.
Yes. Yeah, you can go ahead, Bernice.
Oh, please go ahead.
Well, I think the important aspect of what to lift up here is that those with lived experience could have formally, like if you give examples like a person experiencing homelessness, a person who is conquering diabetes, these are people with either active or transitional lived experience that's just as powerful because they've experienced the system. They may have experienced your organization by going through the programs and initiatives, and having them at the table kind of helps co-design better outcomes because they have their experience as end users, as recipients of the PDSAs that the internal organizations are working on, and really can give input and insight on whether or not it really works. And when we look at measuring what really works, we have to look at it, if we don't have the people with lived experience at the table co-designing what matters or what's important when it comes to improvement and sustainability, what is working could be very jaded and one-sided when they're left out of the equation. Because if the intent was to never look at how it is impacting them or how they're utilizing these skills or tools on their own, which could be some missing components in measurement, that we have that opportunity in co-design to make sure that we're measuring what matters meaningfully so that it's not only beneficial to the organization and institution for better outcomes, but it's also beneficial to those most impacted.
And I will also add, as far as when we're looking at people with lived experiences of inequities, it's so important to shift the mindset and the cultural framework, which has originally been defining expertise by societal norms based on professional title and other things. We need to shift that narrative and mindset to defining expertise based on those who have had experiences, lived experiences of inequities, because those with lived experiences of inequities understand what the solutions are to really help within organizations. So seeing those with lived experiences as the experts and changing the narrative of what expertise looks like is important. And this requires a big mind shift, even in terms of HR practices, for example. How are HR, human resources departments evaluating expertise in those who can really create shifts within the organization for engagement? And I think that this requires a very deliberate and intentional approach in terms of not only engaging people with lived experiences of inequities, but those who are most affected by the work, which includes those with lived experiences of inequities. But these are also the end users, so they fall into all three categories. And that's why we as a team, having lived experiences of inequities, we're working with communities with lived experiences of inequities because we have the solutions in terms of moving forward. Another question that came up at a recent conference, someone mentioned that they're not sure if they're an individual with lived experiences of inequities. But as she began to speak more about her experiences, I told her, yes, you are, because she began to talk about some systemic issues that were occurring for her within her community. So I think that how this is defined can differ based on the space that one is in and what their experiences has been. And I do see there's another question from Romana. It's an evaluation. She says, for evaluation and research, would you recommend that community-based participatory research is effective to co-design and have people with lived experience lead, or is there a better method to use?
Ramona, I'd love to list a response up to that. When it comes to the community-based participatory research, it is certainly an effective way to co-design with community, and ways to, make sure that it's equitable is including the community the entire time. And a lot of examples I see with community-based participatory research is that the citizens or the community members that are part of this community research are also co-presenting and sharing the results and outcomes, not only in their community, but also giving them space and platform to co-author, as well as giving them space and platform to submit their research alongside those PI research partners that are working with them to really look at how they can be in academia or in healthcare systems sharing this message of the research and results that they have.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I will also add that the community-based participatory research model has been around for a long time. And for me, having formerly been in academia, I have seen different ways that this has been utilized in ways that have not been as hasn't been as implemented in the theory to practice way. So I think that there is tremendous opportunity to go from a community-based participatory model to more of a community engaged research model where there's true authentic engagement of community from the very beginning, and not to fulfill check boxes on a grant that says that we have engaged community. And that's why I think that when I mentioned the proactive approach versus a reactive approach, engaging community at the very beginning in an authentic way, in the relationship building process, in the co-design, in the co-leadership, and showing this in theory to practice as far as what it can look like, similar to what Shemeka said as far as co-presentation, co-leadership, but also in terms of equity in the budget. Have the community been involved in co-writing the grant, for example? Have they been involved in equitable distribution of the budget? Have they been involved in meaningfully moving forward in terms of the agenda? Who's spearheading, or are there power dynamics at play? So these are very important indicators of whether there's true community engaged research versus the community-based participatory model, which has been around for a long time, but I think that there's opportunity to shift and have a deeper dive as far as what true community engagement is.
Thank you, Bernice. And we have a comment coming in from Eubens One. Within hospital systems, the search for the lived experience is usually disease related or based. Examples: lived experience as a transplant recipient, as a cancer patient, as a stroke caregiver, as a diabetic. What is missing from this picture from a patient advisor view is that the lived experience can be much different in African American or Hmong community member. This is the element that's missing in incorporating the lived experience within the medical institution arena. The concepts missing are now falling within the social determinants of health domain and has a new QI label. The patient experience should incorporate all lived experiences of inequities and not be relabeled as social determinants of health and shuffled away from the patient advisor domain and QI. Thanks for lifting that up. Very powerful. Wow. Very powerful.
Mm-hmm. My heart was palpitating reading that. So
we got some thanks coming in from Seth for clarifying, and then we have some more. Okay, we have a checkout PCORI research concepts. Awesome. Here's a tool from the community. They have received 2 awards, and it was totally driven by our diverse community, and we serve not only as drivers, but co-designers alongside medical professionals. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Eubens One.
And I'm pleased to
Then,
read this because PCORI is definitely at the forefront in terms of showing what this can look like in terms of grantsmanship and aligning themselves with organizations who are pushing forward community engagement. So thank you for that.
yes, Romana says she agrees, Bernice. Thanks both for the clarification. It's not about publishing, but what can we give back to the community from the research and evaluation? It's also much more informative for what healthcare systems are trying to understand for outcomes and yet still unable to do. Then Eubens one shares documentation is everything in validating the presence and input of community members. Absolutely. Thank you for lifting that up. Thank you all for the comments as they're coming in. This makes it so much more invaluable to just have us all sharing our lived experience and expertise.
So as a co-leadership team, we have developed resources. And as I said earlier, these resources were co-designed by people with lived experiences of inequities. And so these are 3 published resources that we have. And the first is an implementation guide for engaging people with lived experiences of inequities that focuses specifically on the important stage of relationship building. The second is the pre-relationship to relationship building assessment tool and resource guide. And this assessment tool provides the individual and organization an in-depth view of where you stand for engaging people with lived experiences and provides opportunities to plan action next steps for change. And the third focuses on engaging community residents with lived experiences and provides the foundation theory to practice for engaging people with lived experience. And the former two, the first two that are mentioned, they were recently developed this year with the focus on relationship building because it's a critical stage that is often undervalued and has high impacts as far as outcomes. So the People with Lived Experience team focused on this for our 2019 publications as a result of the need communicated by communities. And as I said before, all of these resources have been co-designed by people with lived experiences of inequities. And we will be sharing the link where you can access the version 1 of these resources. We do have a version 2 coming out in 2020, but we will be sharing the version 1 with you after the webinar.
So something else we wanted to lift up in our work together is centered around other webinar topics that we love to share with your organizations, institutions, as well as e-coaching sessions with group and individuals. And some of the topics that we already have coming through the pipeline is what does co-design look like from theory to practice to really address the voice, value, and power dynamics and equity and being inclusive. Another is what does it mean to measure what matters in terms of engaging people with lived experience in organizational practices. And another topic is around what does the co-leadership model for engaging people with lived experience look like in terms of practice. And we also share what does it look like from theory to practice to engage people with lived experience using a community of solutions model. All of these things, these topics are really focused on helping an organization where they are. We use a 2-4-with continuum and looking at identifying where an organization is and kind of helping them with their strategy to meaningfully engage or grow their capacity, meaningfully engaging people with lived experiences, the overall outcome of how we're working together and what these topics center around. Anything else you want to add, Bernice?
I would just say that as your organization is in different shifts for transformation, we are happy to provide further help with any of your organization's needs for these topics as well as topics beyond this.
Awesome, thank you. So we wanted to list up, before we go into the questions, the sponsorship of how we were able to share our labor of love today. And special thanks to We in the World for giving us the webinar platform to share our work today. We also give special thanks to Total Grace Consulting, LLC, and then the Change Agent Firm, as well as I Am Brilliant, as key business partners that are helping support the work and getting this message out like this that we're sharing with you all today. So we want to take this time to personally thank you all for attending our session today. We have our contact information here where you can reach us via email. We would certainly want to open up the space now for you all to have any questions. This website right here gives a copy of our resources and our partnership with when they have created a space where our tools can be shared and available for you all to review. And we're certainly available to work with you or talk with you about your organizational partnership to further utilizing these tools within your organization. What questions might we have? We're going to open up. The phone line is certainly open, and the chat is open for any questions that we haven't gotten to. We want to. I know we had some that came in via email that we wanted to lift up and talk about before we wrapped our call today.
Yes, we do have one, a chat that came in. Romana says, "Thank you, Shameka and Bernice. Really engaging session. Wish it was longer." Thank you, Romana, for your comment. And then Kristen says, "This was great. Thank you both." Thank you, Kristen. One of the questions that did come in for a partner that wasn't able to make it. This partner is based in Europe and says that their organization is at the very beginning stages to engage people with lived experience, but doesn't know how to. And so they wanted to know what would be the first step. And I believe part of that was answered in this webinar in terms of relationship building. But since we are following a community of solutions model as far as leading together, and we have several organizations on the call, I wanted to definitely provide space for us, not only to provide our expertise as a co-leadership team, but also for organizations on the call that might be further along to provide to chat in their expertise for this question.
I want to lift up too, just in case someone is typing in a message, that in one of the resources within the toolkits that we share actually gives an opportunity for you to meaningfully co-design. Maybe you've identified, we have recruit and engage as part of those first steps, but maybe you have identified someone or a group of maybe patient advocates that representing people with lived experience. There is I guess a questionnaire that you all can kind of go through together. And it really talks about the relationship aspect of shared expectations. What do you expect from this person with lived experience, and what this person with lived experience expects from the partnership with you all, and beginning with those conversations, as well as preparing your organization internally for that relationship and being intentional in recruiting people with lived experience. And there are some tools and activities and assessments that will help you kind of see where your organization is in their readiness to be able to partner with and engage people with lived experience.
And we can take a deeper dive in terms of those resources that are in the link, as far as helping you yourself or your organization, helping you to walk through those tools through our e-coaching sessions.
Bernice and Shameka, this is Romana. I wanted to add something to what you both said. I don't know. I didn't look at the e-coaching tools that you have. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm excited to take a look. But I was wondering, so I work with a community health worker section at APHA, and we did our summit this year. And it was really exciting. And one of the things we did was system support mapping, which kind of touches on Shemeka and Bernice, both of what you talked about. That they were able to put in their roles, responsibilities, wishes, and needs and resources based on barriers and facilitators. And then that was able to be mapped out. And I realized doing that session with these community health workers, we had about 125 attendees that were separated by payer providers and government community health workers. And the community health workers actually were able to fill out the system support map most comprehensively and with the most passion. And I realized giving people with lived experiences kind of tools, especially in institutional, powerful institutions where you have healthcare systems and payers, it really brought a voice to the table for them. And that was really inspirational to see that.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. That's wonderful in terms of how to use a tool that provided voice to individuals with experience. And if you could, if you don't mind chatting in that process, I think that that would be helpful for some of the community on this call and who will be listening to it in the future, as far as the process that you utilize at the APHA conference for the Community Health Workers Group.
Yes, thanks, Ramon. I wanted to lift up something you asked earlier about how we can integrate habits of the heart to systems thinking and implementation science framework. I see this being an opportunity to collaborate from the Community of the Solutions framework of leading from within and leading together, because this is about how we look at systems being connected, and the habits of the heart is a way of being within that system and how we incorporate our improvement science in the work that we're doing to have a way of being that includes our shared agreements. So, you know, it brings accountability to us and bring our whole self into the work, but not be so work focused that we're not open to the relationship building aspect of how we grow it together. So I see awesome ways that it can be integrated once introduced, but also helps with theory to practice, because once it becomes a way of being consistent across the system, then things move easier because trust is built, because we have these shared agreements to kind of fall back on when some things aren't synergizing or things are going awry. This recenters us to get back to the focus of the work that we're doing and really making sure that we are appreciating the value of the otherness, including other ideas and other strategies that may be available or present at the table.
Thank you for lifting that up, Shemeka. Specifically with what she's saying as far as habits of the heart, it's been such a key method for us in our co-leadership team, where sometimes we develop an agenda and the agenda shifts on the call based on an inequity that a person with lived experience might be going through at that moment. So sometimes the agenda is shifted by 30 minutes to address that inequity in that moment, while the other things are put on the back burner. And it's so important in terms of bringing one's whole self and understanding what that togetherness looks like. And so it's been crucial in terms of our trust building, where those inequities were then, since space was given to address those inequities as part of a community of solutions, then one can then go into the rest of the agenda, understanding that the individuals have been addressed as part of their whole selves, their whole being. Because it's one thing to come into a meeting with so many things circling in your head as far as inequities, and then you're having to shift into this quote unquote professional mode. And then it's another thing to come in with your whole self as a human being with dignity. And so this has been key in our ways of being in our practice.
Thank you. Well, this is our time for today. We certainly appreciate you all being on the line. We've chatted in our email. We'd love to continue this conversation offline and then follow up with any additional support you all may need or your interest in e-coaching or cohort or individual coaching to really set intentionally strategies and ways of being to meaningfully engage people with this experience. Thank you all so much for your presence here, and we really appreciate your partnership.
Thank you. And thank you, Romana, for chatting in the methods that you've utilized. And we'll be sure to share that as well for those who may not have access to this chat. Thank you all.
Have a great week. Bye.